Mr. Speaker, in total, your committee has proposed 48 questions as admitted by Mr. Speaker to be answered by ministers. Of these, 3 are urgent and 45 are regular questions to be answered orally. Mr. Speaker, again, your committee came to a conclusion that in accordance with Order 72, you may admit statements and again allow papers to be laid, motions and resolutions taken after debates, and of course, the Speaker, as and when the case may be, referral to committees may be made. So, Speaker, the all-important e-levy which government seeks to use to transform our economy, build our roads, and enable our youth start their business is also expected to Mr. Speaker, the minority leader says I should ignore the minority chief whip for heckling me. Mr. Speaker, having said so, I shall pray you, Mr. Speaker, to permit these proposals to be considered by the House in accordance with Order 162 and subject to Order 53 of the rules of this House. Mr. Speaker, attached here too is the order in which the business of the ensuing week has been programmed, and we have a number of questions for Tuesday, the 8th of February, and papers to be laid have also been advertised. And Mr. Speaker, if you go to Wednesday, similar approach is adopted, and all the way to, Mr. Speaker, Friday, where we have just some few only questions, Mr. Speaker. On Friday, we have questions and just one motion. So, Mr. Speaker, without more, I so submit. So the item on electronic transfer levy bill, and you look at the third and fourth and fifth paragraph, the Speaker, it leaves you with a lot of uncertainty. The use of word like likelihood of unforeseen circumstances. Mr. Speaker, if you look at Order 160 of our standing orders, we are supposed to have business program in the House with certainty. It's supposed to be with certainty. Now we have moved from giving the finance minister 1 week to 2 weeks, and now we are even adding more. Yet we are claiming that we cannot give the finance committee time to do that. Mr. Speaker, if our colleagues from the majority want us to have certainty, if you are withdrawing, come and withdraw now and tell us that you come back with the business. So we know that the business is not before the House. But so long as we leave it lingering, Mr. Speaker, with using words like likelihood, unforeseen circumstances, for those of us in the minority, the only conclusion is that you are trying to lay ambush on us. Because you are not certain with the things that you are saying. If you are certain, come and withdraw.
So with e-levy, I do not think that the Minister for Finance is the Committee of Finance of Parliament. I do not. And I will not accept any reasoning that he must do inquiry for and on behalf of the Finance Committee of Parliament. Indeed, if we had railroaded the e-levy bill as he wished through a certificate of urgency, will he have the opportunity to consult the people of Ghana? So once the bill is referred to a committee of parliament, the proper place for an inquiry to engage stakeholders and the Ghanaian citizens is parliament. So I would ask, what is our finance committee doing? It is not for the Minister for Finance to go around the country. It's for our Committee on Finance. And Mr. Speaker, the matter of certainty and clarity that on Friday, 11 February, the bill may be withdrawn and a new bill may be introduced. Members need to know so that they plan their lives. Last week, we gave you good advice. If you had introduced a new bill last week, by now the Finance Committee will be engaging stakeholders.
Well, that is the floor of Parliament and the entire talk about, well, the e-levy being suspended or withdrawn and to be brought back. What do you make of that, though? The minority has said that this is just, these are just some shenanigans, some attempts to let them not know when exactly this will be tabled on the floor of Parliament and to put them at a certain disadvantage. But others have said in respect of the Asin North Member of Parliament's situation, if I can still call him Member of Parliament, that the law is the law. Well, let's get into the papers this morning and find out what they reflect in respect of the e-levy and beyond. Joining us, Ernesto Yeboah, Commander-in-Chief of the Economic Fighters League. Well, let me start with some of the papers as Ernesto joins the conversation. The Daily Graphic this morning, and the banner headline, "Remove all toll booths, danger to motorists," and the National Road Safety Authority engineers are telling the ministry. I went through one of those areas which had a toll booth over the weekend, and interesting, I actually forgot that we're no longer taking, the tolls. And so I took out my 50 pesewa coin and was headed in a certain direction, only to remember that, we're actually no longer paying the tolls. I ended up laughing at myself. But according to the story, the Ministry of Roads and Highways has come under pressure to demolish all the 38 toll booths across the country which are not in use to prevent accidents and optimize road safety. The National Road Safety Authority and the Consulting Engineers Association have called on the ministry to remove the toll booths once they have no use for them. And that is the thrust of the entire directive, or at least what is being spoken of here. President tasks AU to reform global financial structure. Government implements 6 tax relief measures, and driver convicted of spilling concrete on the road. When you go to the middle spread of the paper, fighting galamsey through alternative livelihoods, worthwhile endeavor. And on the back page, Mane, I'm talking about Sadio Mane, inspires Senegal to first African title. It was 2 Liverpool stalwarts, Sadio Mane versus Mo Salah, and it was Mane who carried the day, though he missed that penalty initially in the game. But let me say a very good morning to Ernesto Yeboah. Good morning, my brother. How are you?
I'm good. You?
By God's grace, I am very well.
Nice.
There are quite a number of issues that we have discussed in the last week or so, and I want to run some of them by you. Let me start with the issue of this MCE for Sekandi Takrady, who has been mired in a whole lot of trouble. I'm sure you've heard the audio. Have you listened to the audio, Ernesto Yeboah?
No, I haven't, but
Okay.
I've definitely followed social media commentary, and it doesn't look like the public has been kind to him.
It doesn't look like the public has been kind to him.
Yeah, in terms of the public outlash and all of that. And sometimes, people need to be understood within the full context. And I would hope that a full investigation, because from the commentary, what I get is that he didn't know he was being recorded. That's one. The police officer knew he was recording. That's two. So if you are
Should you know you're being recorded? You're a public official. Should you know you're being recorded, and would that determine how you act, regardless of the context? And by the way, at a point in time, the police officer let him know that I am recording you, all the things you're saying, calling me ugly, stupid, you will transfer me to Enchi and all of that. I have captured it on my phone. And he even attempted, the MCE attempted snatching the phone of the police officer. So does it matter?
Yeah, I mean, I knew I was coming on TV. This is obviously not how I was dressed. But the moment I was told, hey, you are coming on TV.
Right, so we'll work on the connection with Ernesto. Ernesto, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, we are having a slight challenge with your connection. Let me just try one more time. Right. All right. So Ernesto, we'll get to you as and when we have a more stable connection, and then we shall take it from there. So I started with the Daily Graphic newspaper, and I was just running some thoughts by Ernesto Yeboah in terms of the MCE's situation. Of course, we know of his suspension. We also know that he has penned that letter or that release that talks about his compliance with, the directives so far in terms of what Mr. President has said. So let's see how exactly that pans out. But that's it for the Daily Graphic newspaper. Let's get to our next newspaper as we try to reconnect with Ernesto Yeboah. The Ghanaian Times newspaper now, and Veep launches e-travel cards to control expenditure. E-travel cards to control expenditure. There's also, let me just get into that story right before I move on from there. Page 16 of the paper carries that. And it says, the Vice President, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, has launched an electronic travel card designed to specifically control the travel expenditure of government and public officials. Known as the e-travel card, it seeks to facilitate the cashless disbursement of travel allowance and other payments for local and foreign trips of public officials. It falls under the government's policy of digitalizing the country, as all officials will be issued with the e-travel card. It is expected that the implementation of the new policy would regulate and control waste and misappropriation of funds by traveling officials. Dr. Bawumia launched the card at the 22nd Annual Delegates Conference of the Controller and Accountant General's Department held at Cape Coast. He indicated that the system would automate and integrate all the processes from the point of initiation of card issuance, funding requests of ministries, departments, and agencies and entities through approvals and disbursements. Right. So it will be interesting, wouldn't it, to find out what your thoughts are, you out there, this e-travel card. Do you feel it's actually going to be able to curb or control expenditure? Of course, we've known of sometimes flagrant abuses that some of our public officials get mired in when it comes to travel and expenses. Is this going to be the solution? We'll get into that even later on the show as we talk about it. But welcome back, Ernesto. You're joining us via the phone line now. Thank you for staying with us.
Thank you.
Right. So you were making a point right before the connection went bad. I would have you wrap up on that point before we move on.
Yes, I was saying that, look, if I'm aware that I'm appearing on television,
right.
I mean, I would definitely put on something that's presentable, you see. But if it's, I mean, I'm not going to be seen and it's just a phone interview, as we have reverted to now. I can just take off my shirt and sit in a more relaxed position that may be undignifying, I mean, if shown to the public. So that act of recording, I wouldn't condemn it, but I think that in terms of how we judge or how we make pronouncements on the DC, we need to factor that that as well.
Let me just ask you a question, Ernesto. Are you suggesting that, and of course, even in the court of law, there are contexts where you cannot just record someone and take them to court and say that this is my evidence. Yes, I understand that. But even in the court of law, sometimes these are acceptable based on context. Are you suggesting, for example, if I, Benjamin Akakpo, were to be somewhere on one of our roads and maybe I had flouted one of our regulations, our road regulations, and then I ended up slapping a police officer, the MTTD officer who had accosted me, beating him up and all of that, or something of the sort, it would be okay once I didn't know I was being shot on camera or something of the sort. Or if I had a verbal exchange saying all manner of nasty things, it would be okay because I didn't know I was being recorded.
No,
is that what you're suggesting?
No, that's not what I'm suggesting. And I'm sure you know what I'm actually suggesting.
I don't know, which is why I'm asking.
I'm saying that we need to be a bit kind to the man in terms of, or open-minded, if you ask.
I see.
In terms of how we pass judgment. And given that the matter is in court, I think sometimes we might actually be wrong. The court may see it different.
Right.
So given that the matter is in court and the extent of investigation is not fully disclosed yet,
right,
I would rather hasten slowly when covered at some point.
Well, I agree with you, Ernesto, but you cannot take away the angst of the public when it comes to some of the MCE's choice of words. So I guess it's a balance in there. But of course, we'll leave it to the committee investigating the matter to come out with its own report. Of course, the police is also delving into the matter. But quickly, Ernesto, we've heard of this latest development, and I just want to run it by you. So S&P Global rates Ghana positively, and it says Ghana's growth prospects look bright, but Moody's disagrees. So here's the latest when it comes to our economy, and I know you are particularly concerned about that. Page 16 of the the Ghanaian Times newspaper, it says Standard & Poor's Global, an international rating agency, has rated the Ghanaian economy positively in its latest assessment of the country. S&P Global in its latest assessment rated Ghana at B negative or B with a stable outlook. The latest rating affirmed Ghana's B minus rating with a stable outlook, which S&P Global did in February, on February the 4th, 2021. Now, a statement on S&P Global latest rating on Ghana made available to the Ghanaian Times said the country's positive rating was influenced by, quote, Ghana's solid growth prospects with real gross domestic product growth projected to average close to 5% per year over 2022 to 2025. Here's the interesting bit, though. We've had some of these other ratings agencies not give us the best. Moody's disagrees, of course, and they have downgraded us to as low as C. That has been contested. What do you really feel this means for our economy, looking at the fact that fuel prices are up, and I'll be talking to you about some transport fare hikes today and all of that. What does all of this mean to you? Is it a positive development for the Ghanaian?
You really want to know what I really think?
I really want to know what you think, Ernesto.
You know, Ben, we are saddled in debt already. And so anything that makes us attractive for more debt is something that I discourage.
Right.
Because when you talk about credit rating, basically what you are saying is you are looking at an evaluation of the credit risk of a prospective debtor.
Right.
In this case, Ghana. Mm-hmm. And we are in so much debt already. So me just quoting about credit rating, many of the economic jargon, honestly, when you apply it within a specific context, makes absolutely no sense. And so, yes,
are you suggesting that a lot of the time what these agencies and the rest tell us don't reflect in our day-to-day lives? Is that what you're saying?
one, they don't reflect, and then two, even when they do, they don't necessarily apply, in our case. I would move for or join any cause by the people not to go for more debt or not to incur more debt. You understand? So when these credit ratings feature and put Ghana in such a good light for credit, I'm scared.
You're scared. Are you still with us, Ernesto?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so it scares you. How do you relate then to the e-levy, for example? Now, just because we're talking of the economic situation we find ourselves in, you would want to put side by side the e-levy versus going to the IMF. 16 IMF programs. What do we have to show for them? Structural adjustment in the 80s, and now, well, we're contemplating, at least some people are, some economists like Professor Bokpin are saying, go back to the IMF. But there's also the bit about the e-levy, for example, which also has its own catch, and a lot of Ghanaians have kicked against. What is your take on the e-levy, and what do you think? Should we go to the IMF?
Well, it's not e-levy or IMF. I think those two options can be cleared off the table. We don't need e-levy, and we don't also need to go to the IMF.
Okay.
And
what do we do then? How do we fill our revenue gaps?
Reduce the pay of Article 71 office holders, abolish ex gratia, cut down on frivolous government expenses, such as the purchases of vehicles, seeking medical services outside, hiring of private jets for the presidency, abolish the concessions for rich mineral, foreign companies. There are so many things that we can do. Re-establish control of ownership of our mineral and natural resources. Give Ghanaians 50% stake in that space. Make these mineral resources more meaningful. Include it in education curriculum. Let people understand what gold is, how it is mined, and things like that. Put it in our curriculum. We are here in this country only for people from China to come all the way, go into our forest because they understand how gold is and how it is mined. So all of these things for me brings us to that conclusion that yes, we don't need e-levy and we don't have to go to the IMF. We simply have to do some of these things, and then that's it. There's a point that Prof makes, that Professor Bobkin makes, that I very much agree with. That you don't give a sports child more money. It is not more money that a sports child needs. Discipline is what a sports child needs. And at this moment, let us admit to ourselves that our government over the last 30 years have been very indisciplined with the management of our resources, if I should even use the word mismanagement. So these, for me, are what we have to be discussing, and not whether we go for e-levy or we go to the IMF.
Right.
I think the IMF, if they would be fair to themselves, somewhere in their mind, may even be tired of Ghana. At the moment, we've been going to IMF since God knows how. And I think it's time to put the brakes and then ask ourselves the relevant questions as a nation and redesign, moving forward.
Right. Let's look at a few more stories. In sports, Olympics stunned hearts in Gamashi Derby, and Cameroon cracked back to snatch third place against the Stallions. It was interesting because they were 3 goals down. They clawed their way back and then won on penalties. Stunning result from that match. The Daily Guide newspaper, because we've already touched on some of the others, I'll skip them, but pressure mounts on Speaker to resign. And guess who's calling on the Right Honourable Bagbin to resign? An acting General Secretary of the CPP, James Kwabena Bomfe, Jr., aka Kabila, is saying that he should resign, and he is hinging his argument on illness, ill health, so to speak, principle and conscience to save Ghana's parliament. We also know that earlier, prior to this, we had Kweku Baku Jr. also ask that he step aside. But this wouldn't be the first time that, one of the top three, I'm talking about the president, the vice, the speaker of parliament, even before we talk about the chief justice, have had health issues. So why now? What is your take on that, Ernesto? Do you think, owing to the speaker's what has now become, should I call it, frequent travel to the United Arab Emirates to get health assistance, he ought to step aside and focus on his health?
I think it's a fair call for people to make, especially if his ill health appears to be interfering with his work. But also, to be fair, every time I have seen him in the seat, he doesn't appear mentally incapacitated. He's still eloquent, very logical in his submissions and all of that. And so the call for resignation, if not for partisan reasons, can wait. And wait. I think that he needs more time. What I'm not comfortable with is the idea that he has to go out of this country to seek medical care. In future, we may have to have some specific legislation targeted at that no public official can and must seek health care outside the country. We all have to be here. We all have to face the conditions that our so-called leaders have provided for us. Over the time, if you are not comfortable in your own, healthcare environment that you have created for us, who should? If somebody is cooking for you and the person is not interested in having a taste of the food, it raises suspicion. And so I think the conversation could also look in that aspect. And then we see how we could stop our public officials, especially, from seeking medical care outside. Beyond that, we are humans. We all fall sick at some point in time. We convalesce, and then we are back to our feet, or sometimes we die. So the call for resignation, I think it's too early, but it's a fair call, and we can look at it like that.
So, Ernesto Yeboah, it's a fair call, but it's coming too early. Ernesto, let me wrap with you on this matter. There are too many tax exemptions in Ghana. That's according to the World Bank's country representative. I'm talking about the Daily Dispatch newspaper. And it's interesting this comes up. If you followed Newsfile over the weekend, for example, you would have heard Professor Bokpin referencing what President Akufo-Addo said sometime back, sometime in, I think, 2018, 2019, talking about the fact that tax exemptions are the bane of our country. I think it was in 2017, and that it is one of the biggest detractors when it comes to our economy. In 2018 alone, we're told that some 5 billion Ghana cedis went into tax exemptions for a lot of these foreign entities. And year on year, every year, we're expected to lose about $2.2 billion. So when it comes to these tax exemptions, and then we're fighting for an e-levy, and we're fighting for more tax and all of that, what do you think we can do? How does that rub off on you?
I think it's common sense. And
it is what? Common sense?
Yes. And the IMF has pointed it out clearly. In fact, even before the IMF, fighters on the, was it December 1st? That was in 2021. In our press conference, it was one of the recommendations that we gave, that look, we cannot continue giving tax exemptions and tax holidays to multinationals and to companies. That we have to start being realistic, because when we go for loans, when we are out there, it's a real world, and so we have to deal with that, and possibly look at creating more alternatives in terms of how we engage. So, if you look at the amount of money we are losing to tax exemptions, then it's not as if we are getting any benefits for them. Anglo Gold Ashanti has been in this country for how many years? Newmont has been in this country for how many years? Our oil, onshore and offshore. So I think it's a fair call, and government, rather than busying itself with trying to introduce e-levy,
right,
levy that has already kicked the bucket even before it was introduced. I think it should busy itself with looking at some of these suggestions and taking them on board.
Ernesto, thank you so much for joining the conversation. Let me just wrap with this headline. Daily Analyst, Idra disturbances, families get 500,000 Ghana cedis as compensation. I've seen you put out a statement on Kaka Macho, but that's something else that we'll be getting into sometime later on the show. But Ernesto, thank you once more for joining.
Most grateful.
All right, have a good day. And this is how we wrap it up on our news review. But there's a lot coming your way in sports. I told Muftau Nabila that the Teranga Lions were going to oust the Pharaohs of Egypt. He dared me. Well, today he'll have to eat humble pie as he brings you the sports, because Sadio Mane and his crew won the AFCON 2021. Sports up next. Do stay.